first is that it is a matter of public record that Dr. Hlophe lost the status as a judge of the High Court of South Africa as a consequence of a finding of gross misconduct by the Judicial Services Commission. The decision to be taken today is furthermore not merely a political decision, but the exercise of a public power aimed at contributing to the establishment of the very same Judicial Services Commission. In the circumstances, it's a legal requirement of the National Assembly to act in a reasonable and rational manner. We are strongly of the view that it is neither reasonable nor rational to elect Dr. Hlophe as a representative of the National Assembly on the Judicial Services Commission. The second reason why Parliament should not elect Dr. Hlophe is to be found on the grounds I've just mentioned, if you listened, Honourable Member. The second reason why Parliament should not elect Dr. Hlophe is to be found in the constitutional obligation which we as members of the National Assembly enjoy to assist and protect the judiciary in order to ensure its independence, its impartiality, its dignity and its effectiveness. Madam Speaker, even if the majority today holds the view that any person who is fit and proper to be a member of Parliament is fit and proper to be a member of the JSC, it must follow that a large number of applicants to be interviewed by the Judicial Services Commission going forward will object and apply for the recusal of Dr. Hlophe. On the basis, the finding of gross misconduct renders him unfit to serve on a body that is determined to fitness, that is to determine the fitness and the propriety of others.
The provisions of Section 1781 of the Constitution 1996 set out the composition of the Judicial Services Commission, JSC. Apart from the Chief Justice, the President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, the JSC, also consists of 6 persons designated by the National Assembly from among its members, at least 3 of whom must be members of opposition parties represented in the Assembly in terms of Section 1781H of the Constitution. The Constitution does not contain an inherent qualification requirement for members to sit on the JSC. Since members who qualify to be appointed to the JSC are already members of Parliament and therefore bound by their oath of office, the Constitution in its wisdom does not regulate the qualification of members to sit in the JSC. The existing Constitution scholarship on the makeup of the JSC endorses the appointment of politicians to the JSC. According to Professor Pierre DeVos, judges are not elected. The involvement of politicians in the JSC provides a semblance of credibility to the JSC process, especially because politicians are deemed to enjoy the mandate of the electorate. The further point to be made relates to the powers of the judiciary, which include invalidating legislation and adjudicating serious matters of national public importance. Importantly, politicians are involved in the JSC so that they amplify the voice of the poor, the electorate. Therefore, the legal qualification and judicial experience of members such as Dr. Hlophe are a shoe fit for a body such as the JSC. It is also important to highlight that the numerical and proportional strength of parties such as the MKP and the resultant privileges accruing from that are constitutionally protected. The attempt to erode the will of the people by dictating to the MKP which of its preferred candidates are to be designated to the JSC is constitutionally repulsive. More importantly, the rules of the National Assembly do not prescribe the minimum requirement for the delegation or appointment of members to any of its forums such as the JSC. The MKP has done huge justice to the House to bring into the lawmaking House a Cambridge graduate, PhD graduate with law, a Cambridge graduate, PhD graduate from Cambridge, with law degree, to come into the House and assist the House to make the laws of this country. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. EFF, 4 minutes.
No, thank you very much, Speaker of the National Assembly. We, as the economic freedom fighters, fully support the appointment of Dr. Mandlakai John Hlophe as a representative of South Africa's 7th Parliament in the Judicial Services Commission. As a matter of principle, is that anyone who is eligible to become a member of Parliament as per Section 47 of the Constitution can be delegated to whatever responsibility that all members of Parliament are eligible for. And that is the principle that we had sustained. There are so many less than capable members of the Democratic Alliance, some of which are serving in the executive now, who do not have any form of qualification or direction. We have not yet exposed their incapacity, because they're eligible to be appointed even as executives. Some of them are even deputized by people who are more qualified than them. It's just a group of white illiterates, semi-illiterates that are presiding over government, because a certain section of society has given you that responsibility. We respect that. So let's respect the fact that a certain number of people in South Africa have voted for Mkhonto as a party and have designated Dr. Hlophe to become a member of Parliament. So let's respect that. It's a matter of protocol, which we have always protected in the Chief Whips Forum, that whoever is designated by a political party must be respected. So we wish you well, Dr. Hlophe, in the Judicial Services Commission. Thank you very much.
Honourable members, fellow South African Speaker, this is a moment in our nation when we all went out to the electorate and campaigned, asking for who gets to represent the South Africans in this House. The 6th administration did a duty and a function. I have engaged, and certainly this is not a decision about Judge Hlophe. This is a decision about how exactly this House represents itself. I have absolute respect for Judge Hlophe. I respect his qualifications. I respect the fact that the party he represents saw it fit for him to serve in the Portfolio Committee. Equally so, I think this House would do well for itself to be able to establish whether the rules are sufficient enough that should a member be impeached from a particular Portfolio Committee, that same member can then proceed to go serve in the same Portfolio Committee in that sense. And therefore, respectfully, in terms of serving in the Judicial Services Commission, I respect that, Honourable Sir. So therefore, I hold the view that as Build One South Africa, we stood up and we said we want a particular level of leadership and we need to be able to endorse that view. Therefore, it would not for us, given the fact that the rules allow still for Judge Hlophe to be elected, that should just be automatic. Therefore, we cannot support the decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are just 2 or 3 issues that we want to raise on this matter. The first one is that it's correct that in a Chief Whips Forum, we've agreed to work within certain parameters. We've established certain principles. One of those principles is that parties must be permitted to second their own chosen members to specific portfolio committees. That's one of the principles that we've established. It doesn't mean that there would not be a time where we deviate from that if there's a concern emanating from one of the parties who are represented in the WIPAR. The second issue is that we respect the fact that the DA raises a concern an objection on the issue of Honorable Hlophe for the reasons that they are advancing, which are, of course, are on the basis of the argument as presented by the Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance. But our own view as the ANC, which is a view that has been consistent in all the committees we have said, the Chief Whips Forum, as well as in the Rules Committee, we have agreed that in instances where the rules of Parliament or the Constitution has not clearly defined a particular position, we are going to have to live on the basis of the established rules and practices of Parliament. And I want to make an example about this matter, which is still a very contentious issue in the Rules Committee that we are discussing. The parties, for instance, have been engaging one another about what we understand as members of the 7th Parliament as the Chief Whip of the majority versus the Chief Whip of the largest party. And we've agreed that until rules are amended, otherwise, we're going to have to stay with the current convention and the rules of the National Assembly. Our view as the ANC is that notwithstanding the concern that has been raised by the DA on the Hlophe matter, we want to suggest that the House should not take a position unless it has clarified its own rules where there's a lacuna or there's a gap on our rules, as well as the Constitution, so that when we take a position, it does not just become a political position, but is a position that is supported by either the Constitution or the rules of the National Assembly. So that is the point that we want to raise, Honourable Speaker, as the African National Congress.